All right, hello everyone, and welcome back. We're going to continue along here with our modeling. What we are doing this time is we're going to be creating this sort of red outlined part here. We ended up finishing these two side pieces, which have now been merged into one. But what we have to do is sort of connect them properly to where they're supposed to go. Once that's done, there's actually this piece that's connecting between the two. We got some really cool, interesting shapes in here that I'm looking forward to making. And then, of course, we need to bring it back and get this blue piece in here. And then we can move on back to this cylindrical shape that we started a couple parts ago. I don't think we were totally ready for that. There were some other things we had to go back and fix up, but we're almost there. But nevertheless, let's dive into this part. So this red piece, it seems to essentially come out of here and kind of crawl up into this larger piece. So that could be cool, finding a place to stick that into and sort of giving this more purpose. That gives me an interesting thought as to what that looks like from behind. I'm sure we probably have some kind of reference of it. And I guess we just can't really see this. I guess once we have this this larger piece in here with the logo on it, this guy, we're not going to be seeing too much of these pieces, or at least not nearly as much. So that's something to keep in mind. But regardless, we're going to have to make what we have set up. It seems like at some point this stuff got unaligned, so let's just center this up again. Okay, well, that seems to be in order, except for that there. Was there a screw on this side? I guess this is just something I overlooked at the end of the last part. But just duplicating that guy over, we can easily rotate that, stick it in there. Yeah, simple enough. Cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and add in that piece. I think I'm just going to keep it on the screen just for consistent reference. Just resize this guy. Just put it down in the corner. And right, Control Shift A is to keep it always on top. So it seems like we should probably start by making, I guess not. So this metallic cylinder here is what's actually going through this, and it's the same as the pull that's going from this end to this end. So this seems like an appropriate thickness for that. Then there's this outer ring, which goes around it. Still though, that outer ring is smaller than this entire piece here. So all that being said, we should be good to start with the metallic pull that's going across. We can adjust this as we go. But just so our thickness is consistent, I'm going to select this ring of edges here. I'm going to go to our Smart Mesh tools, Smart Duplicate these. And we can work from this. Of course, we're going to have to reverse our faces. The inside is all black, so let's just... actually, we don't have to extrude. What we're trying to do is actually fill a hole on each end. This shouldn't be a open shape. So I just filled the hole on each side. And just so we're even, I'm going to start by just dragging this across and snapping it to the very end. And do the same here, just so we have a consistent basis to go off of. If we look at this though, it's sticking out a little bit, so I just want to make sure that this is centered. I can center the pivot. It's totally even on both sides. And from here, I can just scale out a little bit. however much I think this is sticking out, which looks to be about maybe not even that much, like that much tops. I'm going to pull it in a little bit. I'm going to stick with that. It seems to be coming out about that much. Now we got to work on this ring around it. The easiest way to do that would probably be to grab this existing ring that we already know fits around it, hitting Smart Duplicate Faces, center our pivot, freeze, transformations, delete history, and then we can just scale this in quite a bit. It doesn't look like this ring's too thick or anything, so I'm going to keep it relatively small. And it seems to be pretty flush with the end of this, maybe just a little bit in. We do have that kind of gap there. From here we can grab these faces, we can extrude them back, snap them to the end here. I'm going to isolate this because it seems like everything's inverted. Let's just select all those black faces and invert them. Hit it with an auto smooth, and we got that ring piece. From here, all we really have to do is extrude it out, extrude it back, and then find a place to connect it to in here that makes sense. So it seems like there's a bit of a lip here before it actually extrudes out. So let's add an edge loop, just a little bit back, and let's select the faces we want to extrude out. Let's go with these ones here. I don't want it to be too thick. And it also seems like it's coming from like the top and the middle. So maybe we can do something like that. It's mimicking it pretty well. We seem to be cutting into it, but let's just work with what we have for now. Pulling it out a decent amount. What's the best way to deal with this? I think would probably be to pull this out and conform everything to this. So we know that this is working. Then we can sort of adjust everything around it. So here's a good tip, actually. This just is something I do all the time. Say I'm trying to move this and the increments aren't as sensitive as I want them to be. Like I want this to just be sticking out a little bit by me dragging it in the middle. And I'm doing that because I want it to be symmetrical. If I want it to be more sensitive, I can hit the plus keys and make my gizmo bigger and minus to make it smaller. And if it's bigger, moving it a little bit is going to affect it less, because it's less percent of this, I'm moving it less relative to the scale of it. So I can essentially move this and get a more finite edit, and then I can just shrink it again so it's back to normal. So that's what I'm looking for. Maybe I don't want to do it that crazy. The adjustments are going to get a little out of hand if I do. Let's compromise and extrude this back. And perhaps make this thinner. I just don't want it sticking out so far. But I think that works. But then, of course, we're going to have to adjust this again. But we have a good tool for it. Okay, so that should work. Seems this goes up and then inside. I'm going to rotate it down just so we have a bit more of that room to do so. Let's add a cut where we want to extrude backwards from. And this seems to be a little lopsided, so I'm just going to Use the scale tool to fix that. Of course, it's on an angle, which means it's set to object. Something to keep in mind when doing that. And then we can go ahead and grab these back faces. We can extrude them. Oh, because I have an extra face selected. If we select all the proper faces and hit extrude, we can extrude that back. Seems like it's even going off to the right a little bit. I'm going to change my move gizmo to object so it's on the same angle. Pull it back a little bit. And then extrude out once more so we have another place to pull up from. Let's just line that up. And then, yep, extrude this up. Now I kind of want this to be a square, and that's going to be something we're going to have to work on to square it off. Just sort of manually adjusting it, which definitely isn't the best way to go about that. So let's isolate this and see what we can do. Probably the best way to do it is, instead of putting anything on an angle, keep it all straight and then rotate it. So if I extrude this out, I don't think I want to do it too far. I think I'm going to just weld it onto here somewhere. So if we extrude it out a little bit, we can extrude up. That seems, wow, really flush. Pretty lucky there. I'm sure you guys can see what I'm getting at. Just because it's straight now and not like angled out, I don't really have to worry too much about any weird rotations or anything like that. So I can essentially put this off. It seems like it is pretty thick, so I'm going to extend it out like so. Excuse me. Now my question with this is it bolted in, or is it mostly just there for friction, or what is the actual purpose of this? I would imagine it's to secure it into place or something of the sort. So it doesn't look like something you're going to be physically grabbing. So I guess we can go ahead and bolt it in. I might want to play with the rotation on it. And maybe make this a bit thicker. That's kind of ridiculous. And then it kind of does seem like this is straight up, but this is on the angle. So what if we were to rotate this so it's straight? Maybe that would make more sense. I'm going to go into my side view. Go into wireframe mode. And just use this opportunity to ensure everything's straight. I can change our scale tool back to world and just scale down. Like grab the two verts that are horizontal and just scale down. And that way we ensure that they are totally squished and even. And I suppose we can do these guys as well. So they should be totally squared off, which is good. Let's make a few more adjustments. Perhaps this is a bit too thick. Can pull that in a little bit. Make that guy a bit chunkier. It just seems like the proportions are off just a little bit. I do want this to be bigger, but I guess I want the whole thing to be back a little bit more. That might be what it is. I don't like this big gap here. That's a bit more what I'm aiming for. This seems to be off. Let's go ahead and snap that back here. And don't worry, we'll be cleaning all this up shortly. Comes out, goes back. I guess this is going back more. That's what I was going for, but this just seems to make a little bit more sense based on our proportions. And then I think the other side has a similar situation going on. Okay, so we got that up there. Let's go ahead and start cleaning up this piece. So I'm just grabbing the unneeded edge loops. Seems like this might be interesting. Seems at some point this has gotten separated, I guess. Interesting. I want to check this out. Yeah, what's going on here? I guess I'm just going to delete these and manually merge them back. Yours should be fine. This is just something that I have to do. So excuse me. I guess at some point, yeah, I overlapped some verts or something, or maybe I merged it in a weird way. So I'm just cleaning that up by giving it something to connect to. Okay, that should be better, and then we can continue with the cleanup. So we've been doing similar cleanups for most of the stuff anyways. Weird, same here. I guess at some point I must have had some edges I didn't want selected and beveled or extruded or something. Very bizarre. Yeah, when I double click this, like where is it wrapping around to? Why are these two not connected? Looks like they're connected. If I select all these and go to merge vertices and turn this up, maybe to 0.01. What? Yeah, that fixed it. Okay. I guess there was just verts on top of each other that shouldn't have been there. Regardless, we can delete these. Minus these guys. Don't want anything that's affecting the silhouette to be gone. Get rid of all those. And then just fix this up so there's no sides with more than 4 faces. And that should, well, I mean this has it, but that should be fine. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and scale this in again. Seems like we've adjusted the size yet again. Okay, so that's this piece here. Kind of want to bring it up. Gonna make sure that's on world first. And then since we don't have any direct reference for how this is bolted on, I'm going to give it kind of like a T shape, just to start filling up what's back here. In case you like peek your camera in there, there's some actual information to look at. So this I don't have any direct reference on, like what's going on the inside of here. This is just more or less my interpretation of it. But I'd imagine this is being faceted into there, like this is coming back, going up, and being attached somehow. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think... Yeah, we just can't really see what's going on back there. I guess this is it, technically. So it's going up. Maybe this line is part of it. If that's the case, then it is being attached somehow. Either way, this is how we're going to go about attaching it. In our case, at least. So yeah, let's put some bolts in there. To do so, we're going to get some cylinders, cut them out, fill them with the bolt mesh that we already have. And yeah, we've done that enough times. Should be a pretty straightforward process. Even though this isn't something we can directly see, having anything with like a distinct like connection piece and explaining its functionality is going to help sell this. So even though like this might not be exactly what it looks like having a camera back here and seeing like, oh, there's a piece that's actually connected, it's going to do a pretty good job of selling this to whoever is actually viewing it, which is good. I'm actually going to select these because I want to actually snap them here so I know that they are exactly flush. Let's get those cylinders so that we can cut in our little bolts. So create polygon primitives, cylinder. So we have that selected in this shape. And just sort of get them into position. Let's go ahead and use our poke face technique. So I'm going to cut this in half by holding shift to get exactly in the middle. You can then poke both of these faces. You can get this right in the middle. Make sure we're happy with the size of it. To do that, I'm going to zoom out and see what makes sense. Which that size seems to make pretty good sense. Maybe a bit smaller. Duplicate, move over here. It's at this point that I'm going to delete these extra edges. It's easier to Boolean if these two are combined, just so we only have to do it once. And then yeah, select, new Boolean operation. Can adjust how deep in we want them to be. You don't want it to be too deep. Delete history and base objects. Okay, nice. I can now just grab one of our existing bolts, duplicate it, and just position these guys. Seems like our rotation is off a little bit. Which in this case isn't really a bad thing, because it's probably not going to be perfect anyways. Get one that way. And one like so. I'm just going to combine these guys since they're for the same mesh. And that's that piece done. So that red one is finished. Let's go ahead and look at this side. This one's a bit different because it's... Yeah, this one's very distinctly going up into there. This one, we don't know exactly where it's going because this guy's in the way. I would imagine it would have to go up there anyways. So in this case, we honestly might as well just duplicate this over by hitting D, holding X and putting our pivot in the center, freezing transformations, deleting history, and then just mirroring X. Which puts it here. It seems that this is actually a bit short. Interesting. I guess this isn't totally lined up. Interesting. Huh. Well, nevertheless, it's a good enough starting ground. Let's go ahead and detach this piece. Shift right click, extract, sorry. And from here, let's just snap this guy so it's flush. Move this so it's just hanging out of the end a little bit. And then, let's see. Looking at this, it goes back. I guess that is different. Okay, well, I guess we can play with it a little bit since we have that freedom. I'm going to poke this face so that we can move our pivot there and sort of rotate around it. I'm going to raise this guy up a little bit. I almost kind of want to invert it. Like take the scale over here and go -1. That way I can snap this here. And then do something like this. Unless, because we could also just snap it on this side as well. Let's try that. Let's see how this turns out. Like if we're to do something like that. No, I do like it better when it's mirrored. It kind of has to stay symmetrical, right? So just taking these pieces and snapping them. And just sort of looking like we can do better than that. Let's take all of this, move it back, move it up. And it seems this kind of has like a kink to it. So actually, wait, leave it down. add a line in the middle and move this up. Kind of want this to all be flush now. Yeah, when did this get all rotated? Weird. I guess when we rotated over here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and straighten this guy out, just like we did before, where I grab all these guys who are supposed to be level and just squish them. Squish these guys. Squish these. Squish these. Squish these and squish these, which technically means these are going to be off, but it's by such a minuscule amount. You'll never notice it. So I like how this is kind of hanging out a little bit. This bend definitely isn't obvious enough, so I'm going to raise that. If we're going to use the geometry, we should use it a bit better, so I'll pull it back as well. I'm just trying to think, like, when this ring's in the way, yeah, it should block this because the ring is about the circumference of this cylinder. So I'm just trying to match the reference a little bit. It does mean our faces are on the wrong side though. So let's select these faces. I'm going to go to Shift, right click, extract faces. We can move these guys back here. We essentially made it a different mesh. And we can just scale this -1, delete this face, and then just snap it back into position. Just make sure all the verts are snapped. Seem to be a little off, but that's okay. Mesh combine. Can fill this hole, which we're going to be deleting anyways later on, but we're going to need it for when we bring it into ZBrush. And then just like before, I just want to make sure these are flush and lined up, which should do that part quite well. Let's grab these guys. Just rotate them around 180. And we should be good to just eyeball it. If you really wanted to be precise, you could change the rotation on this, but the chances of someone looking at these and then looking at these and being like, wow, they're the same rotation but mirrored is so minimal that there's really no point. Okay, so that does it for that. What else did we have to do? We had to make this piece here, which we can definitely go ahead and do. But then we also had this back piece, which, to be honest, I kind of want to go ahead and do right now. I've been eyeing it for quite a while. We have these brackets on either end. Well, first of all, we sort of have some sort of metal ring on the inside of here. We already have the pull in place, this bracket, and then this kind of spring with chomper contraption. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing is we have kind of like a bearing, which we can bake down, which would just be a really, really thin piece of geometry. Something just to suggest that it's there. Similar technique as before. We can select this ring, smart duplicate face, grab the outer ring and scale it way down, and extrude this out. I want it to be super thin. And yeah, of course, these faces on the back are inverted, so we gotta fix that up. But with an auto smooth, that piece is already done. Let's just make sure we snap this to the right spot. And then just so it's actually visible, let's go ahead and make it a bit more defined. Duplicate this guy over. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to give it a different color, just so we remember that it's there. It's definitely something really easy to forget about. I'll give it a green so it pops. Duplicated it and just bring it to the far side. Snapping it there, and cool. These guys kind of look like cylinders, but the side are rectangular, if I'm reading that correctly. Because this is rounded and this is flat. Let's play with that idea and see where it gets us. Or I guess I can see if there's another reference image that maybe displays it a bit better. I mean, it displays it, but I don't know if it's much better. And this one's just a totally different mechanism all together. This one's interesting. You can kind of see the connection piece, so it's definitely getting lodged up in there. And this is also a good reference for what we're going to be making after this. Interesting. Yeah, but as far as back pieces, okay, so it's like rounded and squared off at the bottom, but that's also flat. Round, flat, flat, flat. Okay, is there a reason for that? Because I was looking at a different reference, this guy here, and it kind of looks like this is like a metal piece coming off of, it almost looks like, yeah, like a metal piece coming off of here and extruding along, almost as if this is extruding along, like this rectangular piece here, which I guess would make sense for the it's hard to say. It's just one of those angles where you really can't see it all that well. Unless I have a different reference that sells it. Not entirely. It's really always hidden by like a ruler or something like that. Trying to find a... Yeah, this one kind of doesn't have it. I guess we just won't use it for now. If I find a different reference with a good example of it, I'll go with that. But for now, let's just go ahead and get that kind of cylindrical / cube shape in there. That one should be pretty easy to do because we can just work directly off of this. If I center the pivot and extrude this out, what can I do? I'll be right back actually, so I'm gonna go ahead and save first. We haven't done that actually this part, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's continue along. I'm just gonna turn this color back to normal. Yeah, so let's go for that kind of like rounded on the top, flat on the side look. In order to achieve that, I'm going to start at the sides. which would be, I guess it's not going to be perfect, but we can okay, I'm going to select these loops. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just trying to keep it symmetrical, and then all we have to try and do is deselect the ones in the middle. And if this doesn't make sense, it'll all make a lot more sense very soon. Because if I hit Control Backspace, it'll flatten it out, but keep the center rounded. From here, though, we're going to have to give it some kind of breathing room. And we essentially have that shape. It might not be perfect. But that's pretty much what it is. Seem to have a bunch of different iterations of it, but skinny at the top, flattens out, rounds out at the bottom. So we can put one on this side. Just want to make sure it's thick enough, which makes me want to thicken this guy out a little bit. So put one on this side, Control Duplicate, and put one on this side, where I also want to thicken this guy out a little bit. Yeah, and that should do it for those pieces. Next is the big spring in the middle. This one shouldn't be too difficult. This seems pretty straightforward. We've already done a spring. First thing we need to do is find the exact middle of this piece. I'm just going to add a cut in. Holding Shift should take us to the middle. And this is good because if we select this ring and bevel it, we can sort of gauge the width of that spring. Just to make it easier, I'm going to give this a different color. Let's make it red. Yeah, so now we can just say, like, hey, roughly how big is this spring? And then we can use these as guides. I'm looking at this. It seems to be quite large. The whole thing has taken up about that much space. It also seems like we miscalculated the thickness of the bar. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe by a little. So let's go ahead and fix that, which means we're probably going to have to change quite a few things. So let's just select all these loose pieces for now, because when we scale them up, they should all scale up together. I guess at drastically different rates, huh? But we can Control G to group them. Center pivot. Move our pivot of the group to the middle. And scale this way. So that also works. And that's about the right thickness now. That means that these are going to be a little off, but I mean, I think they're mostly okay. For this, I'm just going to scale up a bit. Same on this side. And as far as this goes, we're going to have to do the same thing. This one seems to be quite a bit off. Cool. So let's go ahead and work on that spring, and that'll probably do it for this part, just because it is getting kind of late. So to me, the way that I'm reading this is that this actual bar comes up, has a ring around it, it has a spring, and then it has this contraption on the end. So let's start with the actual bar and its little extrusion. Just adding an edge loop. 0.15, 0.1 will probably do it. Might even be more than enough. 0.05. 0.075. Just because I still want it to exist after beveling it. I'm going to add a cut in the middle because I kind of want a groove for this other ring to rest into. Can bevel this. And then extrude this guy in. Minus 0.025 or something really small. Scale that in. Just sort of grow the whole thing a little bit. I want to put this ring around it, so let's use our favorite tool of the day, which is the Smart Mesh Tools. Smart Duplicate Face. Can extrude this guy out a little bit. Control E to extrude him out. Just to avoid confusion, put his color back to what it was. And now we have that ring complete. Gonna scale that in a bit. Okay. Now let's get the other end before we put the spring in. Similar technique, except for this is a bit more complex. I'm going to smart duplicate this. I'll keep it on screen just so we all know what we're working on here. But essentially we can extrude this duplication out. 0.1. 0.075 to get that kind of thickness. I'm going to go ahead and make it a bit smaller. And we can get rid of this extra edge loop. Let's go ahead and scale it up a little bit. So the first thing is this zigzag pattern, which we're going to have to add because when we smooth it, we need these edges to be beveled with the zigzag, which means we're going to have to cut this in half with the zigzag, which is actually going to be easier than you'd think. I want to add a cut in the middle because that's where it seems to be zigzagged. We're going to bevel that cut. Let's go with like a 0.25. Maybe just a 0.2 should do it. 0.225. And to get that zigzag pattern, we can just add edges like so. So it's going boom, 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 boom. And this might be one of those rare cases where it might actually be better to just have less edges, because it'd be less of a zigzag. But I think this is fine. I was going to think of like cutting it in half, but I don't think this is too many. It's definitely more than this. Maybe it is worth cutting everything in half. So I'm just selecting every other edge. Control backspace. Yeah, this seems to be a bit more like that. Okay, we're getting there. Just gotta delete these support edges now. So I'm just selecting all of them first and hitting Control Backspace. And now you can see, if I select these faces, we have that zigzag pattern. So I can just extract those faces, center pivot, and we have those two pieces there. Oh man, we're gonna have to do that in the middle. Huh, what is the best way to do that? Let's think about that. I guess we don't necessarily have to do them in the middle. So the issue that I'm thinking about is these cuts aren't in the center, but the only reason we need the cuts is to see the outside. We don't even need to technically see the center of this at all. So we should be fine getting away with it just this way. That being said, we are going to have to seal this off somehow. So I'm going to extrude in. That's not right. Let's delete this and mirror that over where we shift right click merge to center. So we have that closed off. So these two pieces should slot into each other perfectly. Okay. And then for this is a tricky one because we still want it to have a sort of smoothness on the inside for where it bevels. So we can just sort of bring this in and do fill hole just because we need it to be fully closed off. Same over here. Fill hole. Nice. Now we need to put a hole in here and then 2 screws, and then we can load the spring into it. And that'll do it for this part. So the hole should be simple enough. We've done plenty of those. Let's just isolate this. Create polygon primitive cylinder. Going to find this a little home. Seems to be kind of on an upward angle. Right about there should do it. Seems to be against or beside one of the triangles, so fitting it in right here should be fine. All right, let's go ahead and save before we do anything. Select, shift select, new Boolean operation, clean up, delete history and base objects. I also noticed like a rim here, so we should probably factor that into things. I'm going to select this and hit bevel. Just to get that rim in when we smooth it. This is just going to very slightly help with selling that. But I suppose we could scale this in like so. Okay, sweet. We got that hole in there. All that's left is to put a hole in the top, putting a hole in this top, and then filling the screws in. I guess I probably should have kept that cylinder, but I guess we're gonna have to make another one. Create polygon primitives cylinder. This one just seems to be right in the top, so I'm just going to snap it. And then I'm going to delete or duplicate this and put it off to the side, so then we can commence our Boolean. So that guy's looking good. And then for this one, can do something very similar. This seems to be angled just a wee bit. New Boolean, delete history and base objects. Cool. Let's go put some screws in these guys. Once again, I included some screws that you guys can use. I've also linked tutorials that will teach you guys how to make screws if you're not comfortable with them. I highly recommend making some screws or finding a existing set of screws and continuously using them over and over again, because having to always make them is very tedious. So I'm going to select this one because, yeah, it's like if you've done it before, you've proven that you are capable of doing it. It's just additional work to always do it. This is a plugin, like I've mentioned before. But yeah, I included some screws that I made if you guys would like to use those instead. Because I think this plugin is definitely a bit more on the expensive side as far as plugins go. But I mean, I've definitely gotten my money's worth and worth out of it. I literally use it on like every project, at least for the colors. It also has like a symmetry tool in it, a bunch of other cool stuff. But yeah, you guys, you know your workflow better than anyone. You know if it's something you're comfortable picking up. So I'll leave it to you to decide how you want to go about doing that. If you want it to be totally on your own, definitely encourage you to make your own screws. But it's definitely one of those things where it's like there's no shame in just borrowing the ones that I gave you or anything of the sort. Just gonna rotate this a little bit. Cool, so those guys are in there. And now let's get the big boy spring in place. So the spring, we did something very similar to that already, so you guys should know exactly how I'm going to go about doing this with a create, polygon primitives, helix. Just going to rotate this. Snap it into position based on the center point. And yeah, we can just sort of play with the inputs. So coils, we're probably going to want to increase to max. Width, going to bring down. Radius, definitely bring down. Maybe like 0.1. 0.02. Width we can bring down. Oh, I guess if we type in, we can add more coils. Okay, that's really useful. So let's get our height set up first. Uh, 2.9 might be perfect. Yeah, and then we can just add, let's try 50 coils, 55 coils. I'm trying to get that kind of tight spring look. I want these end pieces to kind of be out of sight, so I'm rotating them off camera. But that's pretty much it. Like, that's all there is to it for that. I might go in later and just adjust the size of some of these things. Like, I kind of want to make this longer. But that's kind of it. I think that's that. We finally got it attached and good to go. Since our other spring is green, I'm going to make this one green, but let's see if we can drop the subdivision so it's not insane. Maybe 16 is fine. It's more than fine. Turn off wireframe just to get a good view of it. Just gonna hit these guys with an auto smooth. Cool, so that part's done. Yeah, in the next part we can get this hook, which is like not going to take us too long at all. That's not going to be the whole part. Without a doubt, we're going to be getting back to this in the next part. So I'd say in the next part we can get the hook done, we'll get the cylinder, and we'll definitely get these connection pieces done, which means we might end off either starting this or leading directly into this afterwards. Cool, because once that's done, we're pretty much only a few parts away from getting to the guts of things, getting these keys into place. Yeah, I really want to get as much of this done as I can sooner rather than later, because I'm starting up some contract work. So I have a full-time job, contract work once I get home from that, and I'm trying to continue to produce this tutorial. So this might slow down a little bit on my end. Obviously, it's not going to really affect you guys that much, but it's hard to kind of fit it all into my schedule at the moment. It might be slowing down for a bit, but that's okay. We'll make sure we get it done. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this part, and I will see you in the next chapter. Have a good one.